I'm tired, guys. This is the last straw, guys. I'm serious. I am tired of it. It's happening over and over and over and over again, and I am seriously tired. And you know what? This is the last straw. Something has to be done. Because I can't believe that they keep doing that. No way, Spencer. Yes, there's something that we must do. It's time to take action. And I think that it is time to change the scheduling of my movie vlogs. Yeah, because believe it or not, I went to the AMC, and I normally go to the movies almost between Fridays or Saturdays, and I go to the movie theaters at least to pay for the matinee, which it takes 20%. And you know what? All during those years, every time I paid the tickets, it was normally between 13 to 14. I know that gradually inflation rises every single year, but then things get escalated ridiculously. That every time when there's kind of like a big mainstream high budgeted movie, they add $1 more. So now it's kind of like it went kind of like $15 at most. So I was like, okay, then came out to 16. But right now for the movie that I went to see today, a matinee movie, 20% off. It's giving me allergies, this thing. You know how much it cost me? $17. 17. A matinee, 20%. Can you believe this? And I'm talking about, I don't know if it's AMC. I don't know if it's inflation. I don't know what is going on, but every single time and this went beyond ridiculous. The reason why I went there is so I could not pay $18, which was kind of like the base of regular movie viewing. But not this time. Not this time. This is ridiculous, guys. So from now on, a new change of scheduling. I am no longer gonna go at the movie theaters immediately after when the movie comes out. That was I was thinking for a long time ago. Now, if I want to watch kind of like a premiere movie, I will go on the cheapest route, which is not almost every Tuesday, in which you have the Tuesday discount that will cost you like $8.50 or $7 depending on where you go. But this got out of hand. This is why now my recent vlogs is not gonna be no longer. I'm gonna wait it all out until it's Tuesday, where I'm gonna pay cheaper. That is, of course, unless there is something that I want to watch it so bad. If there's something that I want to watch so badly that I can't wait for day one, that will be the exception to the rule. So I thought you guys was gonna come out and say that this is the last straw because you're watching another one of those live action remakes. Well, you're kind of half right, but I'm not gonna go into that kind of like temper tantrum that you saw. But seriously, movie theaters are getting even more expensive, and people are wondering why the movie industry is falling down, and the reason is because it's getting less affordable. It's getting less affordable, especially for regular moviegoers or regular people who they don't want to spend kind of like this amount of money when this amount you could get it cheap, that same amount of price sometimes on a cheaper DVD or Blu-ray. Maybe it's a little bit more expensive than that, but still kind of close. Or probably people are gonna get it, 1 month or two on streaming services. Although I can agree that it's not the same because the experience on the big screen it feels more. You can get more observant and have kind of like this sense of community when you are kind of like surrounded by people or a big screen. You get even like I said, as an artist, I found an appreciation when you appreciate your work on a big screen. This is something that I kind of learned when I was in animation school in Vancouver. Yeah, but okay, that's technically my rant about paying $17 to see the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon, and in a way, this also is kind of sad because it's funny how two franchises that I like that comes from Chris Sanders is basically my favorite getting a live action remake. It happened to Lilo and Stitch, and look what happened to well, I can't say disaster because it was financially successful because everybody loved Stitch, but critically it was a disaster. How awful that movie was, and at the same time. Now we got How to Train Your Dragon. I know that it's kind of have a different director, but Chris Sanders was also involved into it, and but you can easily see some traces of it. And the funny thing is that how both of them are also my favorite franchises of both sides. Lilo and Stitch is my favorite movie on Disney, and on Dreamworks. My favorite movie is How to Train Your Dragon. I think I said that many years ago about my love to the series. How to Train Your Dragon was a movie that I really started loving it mostly because it felt very different from the usual DreamWorks movie that was at the time. Usually DreamWorks was kind of like these pop cultural referencing the kind of style of storytelling. There were movies, like Shrek, Madagascar, and I don't exactly know what other movies there were. Oh yeah, the one that I hate the most, which is Kung Fu Panda. All of them kind of felt like, and there was something that felt that they were a little bit too modernized, although it kind of detracted itself from Disney. But either way, I wasn't kind of like keen for that. But that is until I saw How to Train Your Dragon, and I felt kind of like this breath of fresh air about how good it is. And I know that it also deviates a lot, and it from the source material. It kind of makes its own thing, which. And I love it so much that I watch it 3 times on the movie theaters. Well, actually 2 on a movie theater, and the first one and the third time it was on a special screening in Canada where the art directors were there, and that felt very good, especially since at the end of the show I got a poster that is all autographed by the art directors. It was. So you could, and of course, that came the others from the movie, the second one and the third one. I did also manage to watch at least the first season of the TV series Riders of Berg. I don't know. I actually it was the first and the second. I don't know why I couldn't get onto the third one. Maybe I was too busy probably. I was a bit too probably. I really like the third one. I actually watched the holiday special, and I've been hearing a lot of bad things about the spin-off that takes place in modern times. I have no opinion of that. I haven't given myself the time to watch it, but honestly, I don't think that I don't think that just because it takes place in modern times can mean that it is bad. But I'm just kind of being a little bit defensive to it in a way. But either way, I love the setting. I love the world. I love that it's about a dragon, and the possibilities that you can go with dragons. But then now, almost 15 years ever since the first movie. Then we got they decided to go with the Disney route that every animated film apparently needs to be live action with it. So in order to brag about, hey, we can take CGI or animated and we can transfer it into live action because people love live action. People love to see actors. People love to watch and get their memories to rehash every single thing about the last movie, but Disney usually uses it as a tool to modernize it for modern audiences, and unfortunately, most of these modern audiences, they are not exactly kind of like the best target that you could go through, and that kind of led to a lot of those negative criticism. But negative criticism mostly on the people who actually do like it. Who like the old ones, but for the most part, that critics are they always kiss and all this stuff, and that I don't trust Rotten Tomato or any one of those professionals that sometimes they just have to have a good face in order to make them look good and all this stuff. That I have been kind of like a big critic on all those. Most of the time remakes. Also, that's not saying that I am kind of like I think I already said that I am not against remakes or reboots or anything. As long as you can show kind of like objectify your existence in this one. And sometimes they make it for the worse. And honestly, I was kind of like I was a little bit. I always kind of have this cautious optimism when one of them, but still I get kind of like the doubt. It was like, okay, what's the point? And the trailers of this movie didn't look exactly like I was gonna go into it. I was still having a little. I gotta admit that I did have a bit of a bias about anime about. That I want to support the animation industry and not let it itself bury it with the live action version. No matter because the people were kind of really expecting giving it kind of like a positive vibe, and I'd say, and they were pretty eager for it. But but still, I was kind of still a little bit crossing my finger to see where it goes, even though still in my heart I wasn't kind of like supportive, but I decided to at least watch it, and of course I stumbled with the $17 matinee pricing, and here is the result. How the live action treatment of my favorite Dreamworks movie did. Okay, I got good news and bad news. The good news is that the movie, for a live action remake, does million times, or okay, maybe I exaggerated, 10 times much better than all 15 years of Disney remakes or modernization. Just a lot better than that. And what they took the Dreamworks to, just one. It does million times better. For starters, it didn't make me cringe any second. They played the cards right. It's probably one of the best live action adaptations that I have ever seen. If you kind of discount discount everything about Disney, which is how funny is that? It has it has a lot of things done right, but here's the bad news. The bad news is that because that's not saying much, because it is exactly a carbon copy from the original movie. The movie could have done good. It could have to better kind of say. It could have higher praise if it wasn't for the fact that the original exists, and because the original exists, and what they did, it just carbon copy, but they added some stuff. It just almost exactly the same. This is where I cannot support this practice. It's still a not good practice. It's not good. But it makes it a little bit complicated in the sense that it's still direct. I think that is directed by the same director from the original movie. So in a sense, that kind of makes things a little bit complicated because still the guy had to be arrested for self-plagiarizing. Actually, now that I think of it, no, that's no excuse because the same thing George Lucas did with his own creation, and sometimes things you can't go back and do kind of like something exactly the same just to fix things and all this stuff, and because you can tell that there are some moments, there's some kind of like added stuff that he wanted to add just for, but unfortunately the added things, it was like it doesn't alterate or does nothing to the overall story. There's nothing that there's nothing that we could even have already known. So in a way, it's almost like an extended edition, like 30 minutes more, because it really felt longer than the original movie. And so at the end of the day, no matter how good it was still pointless. The whole movie was pointless. There was no point on doing that. So instead of wasting that kind of money in actors or CGI and environment and all this stuff, why couldn't you at least pick up the other movie or add extra scenes or kind of like remaster it to make it look good, like in 4D or something like that. I got a little bit scratched that because they will also make the George Lucas bullshit in which they're gonna add some unnecessary scenes, or sometimes they'll look awful. I'll look bad at all this stuff. So honestly, this is kind of like the very. It's almost like they wanted to have the whole. It's very complicated. How can a movie? And this is this is kind of also shameful in a way. It's shameful that how all these elements look so good. Because a lot of things looks good, but it is a shame that all that talent, all that energy, it's just wasted to rehash something that it is almost like a carbon copy. It is exactly the same, word to word, almost action to action. I mean, even the shots. And I think that mostly this itself, I probably could say that this is a new kind of a vanity project. It's a vanity project about bragging yourself that hey, since we did this, now we can transform it into live action. But which technically, this is another thing that people should be arrested. They should be arrested for attempted murder to animation. I mean, there's nothing wrong, with animation. I mean, people work hard, to make all these things, and And also, it doesn't help that there is a lack of charisma when you see all these people, just in costume. When animation, you can do almost a lot of things. I mean, there's animation with the dragons and all this stuff, but the human character, they have more expression, and the character designs also that you can exaggerate. Uh, you can exaggerate some things. Okay, let's go a little bit in which. Also, I think that this is one of those vlogs in which I'm not gonna go too much into the point in which we all know, anyone who saw the movie 15 years ago, we all know the story. It's setting on a fictional Viking world where, of course, we meet our hero Hiccup, who is the scrawny Viking, the son of the chief. He wants to be a dragon killer, but everyone sees him like, well, he's scrawny and all this stuff he meets this dragon who is kind of like the most dangerous of them all, the Night Fury. And he befriends him, named him Toothless, and he kind of begins to see that he has the power to tame dragons. Of course, he has to keep it secret because his father, the chief, put him on a dragon killing training session. It's kind of like a good story between kind of like an underdog and his pet dragon, which also comes with a relationship with him and his father, the chief, the stoic. That was his name. The original movie in itself, it has a great story. It's almost perfect. Okay, it maybe has some flaws. Maybe I'm overhyping the animation, but but I really love it had all the elements. It had the music, it had the characters, it had the pacing. It was great, and I remember that the flying scenes were amazing and all this stuff. I'm not saying that this live action remake also has it, but again, that live action wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the original. And in making it kind of like a carbon copy thing, it still feels like someone is cheating on it, on kind of like an old term paper or something like that. So that's kind of, honestly, now that I think about it, it is kind of like cheating. It's almost like if the director finds he's supposed to make a kind of giving a new test, but he's like, okay, I'm gonna take the previous test and then copy it. Just add a little bit thing so people might not notice that it's cheating, but because they think that we have Alzheimer's. They think that we will forget all these animated films or these old films, especially in the age of internet, where people can't even see and find obscure stuff from even the 50s. Okay, so I can't say so in a movie, because it was done kind of like a carbon copy, it feels like this movie feels like it is immune to criticism in the sense that everything is from the animated thing, just with other stuff, because the story is good enough. It's good, and then when you carbon copy, that only the ones who never seen the original will eat it up. And again, that's a way to kill off animation. This is how this is how those animated films gets killed off. In a way, what they're doing, even though the movie was good, they're no better than what Disney is doing in practice. And so the added elements, like I said, on the story, they almost doesn't add up. Also, they were kind of like a little bit minimal. Also, it kind of doesn't make sense. One of the biggest add-ons that they wanted to add on the movie is that they wanted to add kind of like this small side story involving the character of Snotloud, the bully of the group. in which he's always ignored by his father, and his attitudes because he wants to prove that he's good enough so his father can pay attention, and it's only this feels kind of like wasted because it doesn't affect the main story. It just feels like add on. And there were kind of like another dialogue between Hiccup and the love interest Astrid, and it feels kind of a little bit extended. But the only problem is that it feels like it felt tempted to make Astrid kind of like, hey, she's the girl boss and all this stuff, and she's kind of like great and all this stuff, and kind of also wanted to give that they wanted to add that they wanted to hint that that Stoic has a little bit of a preference to Astrid over Hiccup, although that put the thing a little bit more mean-spirited to the relationship between Hiccup and Stoic, in which it kind of makes her like, I rather like her more like my daughter than you, Hiccup. Luckily, it didn't go that far, but you can tell that there were kind of a little bit of hints with that. Additionally, and this will also lead me a little bit to the cast, in which I got a little bit of a mixed feelings with that, because in a way, all the actors are doing a good job for the most part. I'll say the guy who plays Hiccup. I don't have my computer here, so I don't bother to see the name. The guy who plays Hiccup, he's good, I'll say. Also, he's no Jay Baruchel, because the way he acts, he really sounds kind of like a normal, and I kind of like, when Jay Baruchel gave a little bit of his nasal voice, because that kind of gave a little bit more character on Hiccup. Yeah, and Hiccup, because he always sound like, why won't your life listen to me? Or, oh my god, he's a dragon. That, honestly, I like that. I like that nasal voice because that gave it a little bit kind of like a more scrawny personality to Hiccup. It made him, because that was the point of Hiccup. He was supposed to be vulnerable. Even the character design of him, he's supposed to be scrawny and all this stuff. And you know what? And as much as I like the kid, you can tell that there's also miscast on all this stuff, and again it goes especially with Snot Loud again, because here's where one of the biggest faults that this movie has on the miscast, and going back to Snot Loud, not only they fail on him on trying to give him that daddy issue subplot that goes nowhere. They also fail on casting the guy, not because of his acting, but how he looks. How he looks. Because the funny thing is that they all complain that Hiccup is just, this guy, the scrawny one, the runt, the weakest one. But unfortunately, Snot Loud, who is the bully, he looks more runty compared to Hiccup. Because they pick an actor who is actually a head smaller than the actor who plays Hiccup. And Hiccup's supposed to be the smallest one. He's supposed to be the smallest one. How did they mess this up? How did they mess it up? The guy is not even that muscular. Hiccup looks even a little bit more muscular. He has more meat. They had to get a guy the guy who had to play Hiccup should have been smaller, weaker. He had to look weak because he's supposed to be weak, and compared to the other ones that, my God, they don't look. I mean, this is the big fail, and the big fail. Another failure on the casting, at least on how they look, is that they also failed the twins, Tough Nuff and Rough Nuff, because they're not twins. At least one of them looked like how the animation looked, but they decided to have one of them be kind of more pick up kind of like a chubbier, no offense, chubbier girl, because well, apparently they couldn't afford or they couldn't make a twins out of it. Yeah, I know that twins are kind of a little bit hard to find, especially the ones that they want to look the part. Actually, in the animation, I always said that one of the twins actually looks like Alison Prangler, the one who was called Obscurus Lupa. And why don't they get her? She actually looked like that. Although she's a YouTuber. She's a YouTuber. Just get to that. And also, what was it, Gover? I think he was also miscast because but this is mostly because I think that this is where I think that the character designs should have been better. The character designs, on the animation, you can get away, by having different disproportions of the body, or for example, you can give it kind of like a bigger jaw, or bigger muscles, bigger, or with tiny leg or something like that. But this guy, he doesn't feel like he looks the part. They just gave him kind of like a makeup and the costumes, and that's it. And there are times in which he forgets. He forgets that he has, this accent that makes him sound Norwegian. Sometimes he forgets that accent. Sometimes. Continuing on with the actors, at least I will give it a little bit of appreciation to that they brought back Gerard Butler as Stoic. It's funny how they really did the effort to make him look the part, except that you can't make Gerard Butler look even stronger, because in the animation you can see the big muscle, the strength. You can exaggerate the proportions and make him look big. Now, I mean, the funny thing is that whenever he has the coat, he kind of looks like it, but sometimes when he takes out the coat, he kind of loses some extra pounds, and I don't see Stoic. I just see another Viking. Although you gotta give it credit to Gerard Butler that he really gives it all, and he does keep the accent and all this stuff. As for the rest of the cast, then it's fine. But I do have special criticism to the girl who plays Astrid. Astrid is probably the worst actress in the movie. Not because she's bad, but compared to America Ferrera in the original film, she's less expressive, and her delivery can come off very wooden. Not very wooden. She has a very wooden wooden delivery in her lines that kind of makes it feel like she's not trying that much. And this is kind of like the beauty of animation, is that that sometimes people tend to dismiss that voice acting is also a kind of acting, and they have to give it all, and it's not very easy. Okay, acting itself is not all the time easy. But I challenge people to watch back to back both movies, and you can tell how America Ferrera and the live action girl, they have different type of delivery, and you can tell that the live action one, she's kind of wooden in times. She's not as expressive. It's not as expressive, especially for a character who is supposed to be kind of like the the best warrior who has a temper, but she can be also has a sweet spot. Yeah, especially considering when that she has a little bit kind of like this love-hate relationship to Hiccup, and sorry for the baby. So honestly, I don't want to fault on her too much, but I do have to criticize her that her delivery was she was a little bit sleepy, and so and of course there's and of course you have kind of like uh, what was about what I was about to say. There's some kid crying out outside. I don't know what's going on. I do also want to add that another pointless character that they add is that they add that this elder, who is the one who keeps tally of the whole thing. Actually, I had to revisit it in the movie, but I don't remember that there was kind of like this elder taking tallies of the result of the dragon killing training. I don't know if it was, but still, I felt it was kind of like pointless. Oh yeah, and of course the dragons. Of course, you should never forget about the dragons. This is where I gotta say that I gotta give it credit a lot, because the dragons, not only they look exactly the part, they look really good. Even our main dragon, Toothless. I absolutely adore Toothless. He's really cute, and this is one of those in which the transfer from the animation to live action actually works, and it works blending in many ways. But here is the reason, and this is the reason why that work felt a little bit more easier compared to Stitch in the live action version, because here's the thing. The reason is because the dragons were already CGI. The dragons were already CGI. They were already computer animated. So when they're already computer animated, it's a little bit more easier to transfer it into that. So again, it's kind of again with an easier route. It's an easier route to that. So they only added a little bit more polish on the textures. This is why it's easier, I'll say. The job was already done. So there was almost like, just put it there and that's it. There is transferring from a CGI to a live action environment is a little bit easier compared to making a transition from traditional animation from scratch. Because they have to build up the models all from scratch, and sometimes it works and sometimes it not. And also what with the problem with how Stitch looks like is that Stitch is a furry creature, and making hair texture is a little bit more complicated with scales. Scales doesn't have, like kind of like individual strands that is harder to render compared to something slick and smooth like lizard scales. Not exactly an expert, but hair is a little bit more challenging compared to scales and horn, because they are more solid compared to fur, wool, or stuff like that. So, but again, still the dragons, including Toothless, look great. Well, also, long story short, also, and then for me, it's pointless talking about the cinematography, because it's almost exactly shot by shot, except by, well, it's live action. Some things they try to get away with it by looking it cooler, but still at the end of the day, you can tell if you saw the movie, you can tell beat by beat, but that is still the same movie. And of course, there are some musical choices that they change here and there, but if there's another thing that I love from both movies, is that the musical score, which they brought the same guy also. It's great. It's uplifting. It's really good. And but of course that music wouldn't have existed if it wasn't because the original movie exists. I mean, have you noticed a little bit kind of like of a pattern here? It's a pattern that this movie is just a carbon copy, and it still is. And again, it's gonna still be compared to the original film. So in a way, like I said before, no matter how good this movie was, it still feels like a carbon copy. It's almost like self-plagiarizing it. It's basically pulling a George Lucas the Star Wars Special Edition. It just coated in a different coat of paint. So you can tell the kind of like the conflict that I want to love this movie, but I can't. I can't love it because I don't support the practice. I don't support the practice. So this is why I stick to the animated film. Okay, so then you ask me, all right, genius, how can I say, how do you excuse this movie's existence? Okay, let's say that I want to continue or make a reboot of How to Train Your Dragon, but this time they wanted to make it live action. Route number one, make it a reboot, but don't play it exactly like it is. Make the events different. Don't take any dialogue or no nudge, wink, wink, look at how we did like the original movie. Even differentiate from the events. I know that it's going to be a little bit tricky considering how movies are nowadays, but sometimes the risk is better than nothing. But make it something that it doesn't feel exactly like the other one. It just go do it, differently. Make even the course of the events kind of like different. The best example I can say is, for example, when they reboot Digimon Adventure. There's the original, and then there's the 2020 version, in which both of them they have the same thing, the same characters, but it's totally different. This is route number one. Route number two. How about a reboot of How to Train Your Dragon, but this time making it a little bit closer to the source material, because the source material is totally different. The books are totally different from this one. So that's kind of making a reboot with kind of like a new perspective. Okay, people will have kind of like their choices, but okay, you could try out something a little bit closer to the source material. Route number three. Create something totally original. It doesn't necessarily have to be with Hiccup or Toothless. It could be in another setting, like for example, fantasy medieval times or the future. Let's say. I mean, they tried that with the modern times in a TV. I think it was a TV series, and people don't like it. But honestly, I don't mind, but at least you get something like that. Those are kind of like my pitch ideas of how to Train Your Dragon live action remake could have its existence. This kind of makes me also think that this is the reason why I even despise the remakes of Night of the Living Dead. Oh yeah, and you know what? I wouldn't have minded also if they wanted to make it kind of like an exact copy of that. It could have been better if it was something kind of like in a Broadway play or something like that. Although that will, but I will have a set of carbon copies on Broadway. But this is mostly because Broadway play has those some limits on what people will see and the execution of the stage, but you have to admire, because this is where people have to put their noggins, in which they have to find a way to make it work. But anyway, that's my rant / stuff that I have to say about How to Train Your Dragon, in which maybe I could put this as one of the best movies of the year, but not exactly high note. But because still, while I appreciate that it was better than any of those Disney live action movies, it still doesn't. It still there's the fact that it's still a carbon copy of the movie. So I cannot support that. I cannot praise that. I only have to say that, dude, you just self-plagiarize yourself. You just self-copyright infringe yourself and make it an exact copy. And I can't forgive that about how you try something that it was already good to begin with. And I know that many people, have the knack of that. I mean, you know what? The more I think about it, this movie is a little bit kind of like the Psycho remake in a way. Although the second remake was terrible to begin with. Although this one played the cards a little bit better. So it's kind of like in a complicated state. So in the meantime, guys, I urge you people just stick to the animated one. I'm not gonna deny you the pleasure of the other one, but I'm still insistent that animation is becoming a little bit of a lost art. Some people are trying to resurrect it, but again, $17, really?